Welcome to the Collectability Podcast. Today, we have the absolute pleasure of speaking to the ultimate authority of vintage watches, the one and only Davide Parmegiani. Within collecting circles, Davide is known by these three words, the big boss. Today, we are going to explore the questions that are on all of our minds of the past, present, and future of collecting watches with the man that knows the answers. Before we get started, I would like to offer a brief biography. Davide Parmegiani is a dealer of the highest order and has literally bought and sold the world's most important and valuable Patek Philippe watches since he entered the field in the 1980s. He is a connoisseur, curator, scholar, market maker, and also, most importantly, a collector at his core. And a recent addition to his bio, he is now 3 years in, co-chairman of Monaco Legend Auctions. We'll dig into that shortly, since Davide is just returning from a record-breaking auction from this past weekend. So, without further ado, welcome, Davide.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you very much. Very happy to be here with you. Thank you for your introduction, much more than I deserve. And yes, I have to tell you, everything is quite fine. This new life that I joined some years ago is giving me a lot of excitement, a lot of new energy, and it's a different job that I've been living for the last 35 years from the opposite side of the room, because I was a buyer for some of the most important collection in the world. I was always a buyer at auctions for watches, and today to find myself as the auctioneer is a very, very nice new experience. I have to thank the fact that my son joined me in this experience, which is something makes me very proud. I like very much the fact that the market is now having another time after all those years, still gives new excitement and still gives new satisfaction to collectors, dealers, and whoever is involved. I have to tell, everything is quite fine. And after an auction like 2 days ago, I'm in heaven. To be honest with you, it's really what I feel.
Just watching the auction and looking at the results, there were many surprises for the market. What stood out for you?
I have to tell you, we could never expect the amount of people interested in the Cartier event. Cartier, for me, was always one of the nicest and one of the most important brand. And I always also myself tried to collect and to suggest to friends and collectors to put those watches in the safe. I mean, to put those watches in the collections, because I think that the manufacturer made some of the nicest design and some of the nicest watches in the last century. But it was never so easy. And actually, also the company demonstrated to be a little bit lost in the last 20 years of manufacturing, because they at a certain point they went too much for me to the complicated watches. They want to compete with the manufacturer of complicated watches. They wanted to try to make tourbillons and this kind of big complicated watches, when instead for me Cartier, the real feeling is design, is shape, is really charming and very nice watches. And actually with this collection that I made for a big friend of mine, for Marcello Fratini, the guy that consigned the collection at auction, it was really, the people could really feel again the experience of buying something nice without having the stress and the pressure to invest too many millions for a watch, because this is something also that is becoming a bit of a problem in our field. When you walk into an auction room and you want to buy something, you have to have really a big wallet, because today, whatever it is, even if it is independent, even if it is modern contemporary, or if it is a really high level vintage, you have to consider you have to do very big investments. Cartier was different, was fun, was going back 25 years in the old days, like me and you started, and to have the possibility to spend some time together with friends, buy a nice watch for 20,000, 15,000, 30,000, and at the end of the day, you really own something that you like very much on your wrist. You own a Tank America, you own a round Cartier from the 60s, you own an automatic tank from 75, it was really something that people appreciated. And probably it's the reason why we had a strong result on the Cartier event. Then the other catalog is another thing. It's something put together with still the feeling of what I have been done in the last 35 years, trying to follow a bit of a trend, but also to follow the passion of my friends that put together collections and helping them to ameliorate and change and go over to the next level. So one of my friends decided, okay, to give up on some Ovetoni, collection, like everybody knows. And he decided, maybe it's the time for me to go on something bigger, even if he has already some incredible watches. But we put those watches ourselves, and it was a long time that the market couldn't count altogether a so incredible amount of various Rolexes from the 50s, all in extremely very nice preserved condition, and all coming already at the time from very big auction houses or very big collections. And so this called a lot of people together. We had an incredible, very nice crowded auction room. We had a very good online, and we had a lot of friends on telephone. And a lot of friends from really the old market that were really happy to try to get one nice Ovetoni in your stock condition for their collection. That came to be an incredible event also, and we had incredible results.
Did you find that there were a lot of new bidders, new clients to Monaco Legend during the sale?
Fortunately, yes. Fortunately, what we are doing is trying day by day to grow. And what I said at the beginning in my newsletter, when I write to people and collectors why I tried this new adventure, is that I really want to try. I learned from all the biggest auctioneers, which are all my friends. I'm one of the best friends of Osvaldo Patrizzi, yourself, Derry Schnipper, Aurel Bax. Everybody knows. I've been cooperating with all of you. I try to get the best of all of you. Everybody has his good character. Everybody is the best in what he does in his way. And, I try to get the best. I'm not an auctioneer. Claude is a good auctioneer. He's demonstrating that his skill is very good to stay and auction the watches. For me, still what I can do is select the good watches, try to select only the best. And I'm learning, like everybody, I still make some mistakes. There were 2 watches withdrawn in the sale because I valued at a certain point to be nice, and then I really understood they were not so nice. I withdrawn it from the Cartier sale. Marcello bought it in the time around the Holy Strip, but always sometimes in collecting so many watches, you make some mistake. And we still are learning from our mistake. We are trying to grow day by day. And we try to select nice watches that will allow us to give the customers the opportunity to come at Monaco Legend, buy something nice, be safe. Even if they see or they don't see it, it's something when they receive it, the watch is better than in the pictures, because still our catalogs are for sure not the nicest. We are not the powerful to invest in big technology, so we have to go really slow and contain everything. But I believe we are growing, and every time we are having more and more people to come and look at us. And the more they come and look at us, the more they are happy to participate. To be honest with you, to finish this question, which is very important, I really don't want to look like the great guy of everything, because I'm not. I'm one of the good player, and I have to tell you, hoping it's the end of this COVID nightmare, helped a lot also the people to come in a place like Monaco, spend 3 days of fun, and 3 days of good weather and 3 days of hanging around all together. It was looking like we were at the end of the 90s in the auction room, not at the end of 2021. because the last 2 years that everybody lost in life and was closed in his house, now I think also the auction in Geneva, they're going to go incredible. And the auction in New York, they're going to go incredible, because I wish myself that in 2 weeks I can take my flight and I can fly to Geneva and enjoy the auction room. And I want to go to New York and have dinners in New York, nice places, and have lunch with you and have a coffee, you understand? And this is another thing that it inflates a lot the enthusiasm. When you walk into the auction room, you want to participate. You are not there to fall asleep, you know. Everything that was looking normal up to 3 years ago, to go into an auction, it had become already something, okay, very usual, business is boring, whatever. Today is again very exciting. And I was excited to be from the other side, but I've seen all my friends in the room, they were very excited to be there and bid and stay together. Hanging around is big part of the matter at the moment.
Watching your auction on Instagram Live, you could feel the energy in the room, and a special a note to your auctioneer, your co-chairman, Claude Cohen.
Absolutely.
He had such a level of energy and excitement, and he carried that auction like the best. So congratulations.
He's growing in the best way. He received the compliments of Osvaldo Patrizzi at the end of the auction. He was there and he complimented him. And I was incredibly astonished, because Osvaldo Patrizzi compliments all himself usually. We know what we are saying. So actually, to receive the compliments from Osvaldo, one of my best friends, we were definitely honored.
I think that is quite the honor.
Absolutely.
And you noted the nostalgia that you're feeling in today's auction, and that is a perfect segue. Let's go back to the 1980s when this all started for you. Well, you grew up in the industry. Tell us how it began with you and those first early auctions. And my follow-up question, I'm very curious about your first trip, your watch trip to the States in 1987 to see the American super dealers, Joe DeMacy and Bob Wingate. What was it like in this era?
Oh, well, that was fantastic, because as I said already many times, I had the luck to be the right guy in the right place at the right moment. I was very young. I was really, watches for me were the most important thing in my life. I liked watches very much. And I had the luck to be able to travel. I made school that gave me the opportunity to speak fluently English and French. I was not a good student, but I liked languages. So I was speaking fluently English and French already when I was young, 17, 18. I could travel myself. And, to go in America in that period was greatest experience, because most of the vintage watches ever appeared were there. There was so many watches to buy. And Italy was America was an incredible source, and Italy was an incredible place to sell. Everybody, big entrepreneurs, they were full of money in the end of the 80s. There were really good times for Italy, for Italian entrepreneurs that were making a lot of money with their companies. And actually they were avid of buying and collect vintage watches. Marcello Frattini in the auction with the Cartier was absolutely a testimony of this thing, and his cousin Sandro, that everybody knows as the biggest collector in the world, and for sure one of the people that helped me most in my career. For sure is another demonstration. Those guys, they were avid about watches, and they were buying anything that they didn't have and everything that was available. So, for me, it was like being a small boy in a candy shop, because I walked into auction room and I had the opportunity to buy all the nicest Rolex, Patek. Of course, I had competitors. So already at that time, there were people like Helmut Krott. There were big buyers like Osvaldo Patrizzi was buying for all his big customers. But to be honest, the market was much smaller. So we didn't have the incredible amount of important dealers that there are today. All the big young American guys that today leads the market, like Eric Koo, Michael Weisberg, Justin Gruenberg, Andrew Scheer, and I don't remember the other, Matt Bain, my brother. All those guys, they were still, maybe some were very young, some were still small. They didn't have so big customers. So, I really could buy almost everything. And I bought all the most important watches. It's known, whatever it is, somebody likes it, somebody not, but that's the truth. I had the opportunity to go through my hands with, I had John Goldberger, who was very young, incredibly rich, and he every time I was coming with new watches, he was buying and putting his collection. And Howard was buying maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 watches per month, Today, with the prices that watches they have, it's impossible. You have to consider that maybe a $24.99 in pink was maybe $250,000, and was already in 1992, 1993 was a big watch to buy. But there was a crisis in the beginning of the 90s with the Gulf War, with the first Gulf War, when the dollar went with the lira was like 1,000 rate. The rate was one of the lowest ever made. And, for me to go to America to buy, it was incredible. The watches was looking like they were so cheap. You can buy anything. The 1518, it went from an average price of 90,000 that it reached in 1989. It actually went to probably no more than 60, 65,000, 70,000 in 1990. And this was incredible. We were really able to make the new market, We were buying, me and another few of Italian dealers, we were really buying very aggressive. And to be honest, my luck was that I liked watches always more than profit and money. And so also I was buying also for myself. When I found a nice watch, I was putting on the side. Joe DeMasi and Bob Wingate that you named were and are to me monster of the market. They were over anybody else. They were the biggest already. When I began to work, Joe DeMasi was the biggest dealer in the world. Bob Wingate was his brother because they live very near one to each other. They had everything. And I want to put inside that area Jeff Morris and Peter Foster in New York. They are the first people I met when I went in New York in vacation in 1987 with my wife at the time. We were making some sort of early honeymoon. We were not married, but we were making our first vacation together. And I went into the shop of Peter and Jeff, and I had my green American Express, and I had $5,000 on my accounts in Italy, 5,000, the equal of $5,000. And I saw $30,000 of good watches that I could have sold in a second. And fortunately, there were not internet, there was not cell phone, there were not, and there was not another important machine that is the POS for credit cards that today would have forbidden me to make that kind of deal. I proposed to Peter to take the credit card and to put every week, every 10 days with manual, they had to take it manually and they had to cash it in the bank, but once every week. So the 30,000 I divided in 4 installments. And, they looked at me and they said, well, no, who the fuck are you? I don't know. We can trust it. I said, you can trust me. I like those watches. I have customers in Italy that want them. Give me the watches, you will be paid. And they trusted me. And to be honest, that was really for me the beginning. I made incredible relationship with all those American guys. They trusted me. They gave me a lot of credit. At the beginning, I was coming to America, buying millions of watches after 2-3 years. And they always were waiting for their money, but everybody was paid, and everybody is still my friend today, fortunately. And I have to tell you that I was lucky. And I told you, it was the right guy in the right at the right place in the right moment. But it was a lot of luck. Baraka already in the business. My luck was that somebody skilled by like Massimo. He decided he wanted to go for some years on the restoration business. You remember, he was not the restoration, the restaurant business. He opened that incredible place in Miami that he had a lot of success. And, he gave me the opportunity to squeeze myself into the market. Otherwise, it would have been much more difficult. Today, he's back into the watch business and everybody knows that he's a big player, But I have to tell you, I had a great time with all those guys. We had a great fun, and fortunately, we had the luck to see all the nicest pieces that went into the market in these 30 years.
And it sounded like each of those relationships started with a handshake and with mutual trust, which is what this business is all
This
about.
is sure. This is for me still today, is my way of doing. If I have a name handshake and I like the people that I deal with, for me, there's nothing more than the word that you can honor that is important. All the rest is no problem.
Thank you, Davide. You mentioned the demand in the 1980s from the Italian market. I'm still not understanding who was buying in the 1980s in Italy. Why were they buying? How did this all get started?
I think Italy was always the heart of collecting watches at the beginning, and actually entrepreneurs, they were buying because Italians, they always had the feeling with the vintage watches and vintage cars. Some of the most important vintage cars, they started in a collection, they started in Italy, and they're still active. Maybe some of them sold their collections because they arrived to a certain age, but it is the same like the watches. Collectors that were in the mid 40s, from mid 40s to mid 50s, in 1985, 1988, they were absolutely avid to possess vintage watches. They liked them a lot. And so I had, when I opened my first shop in Milano in 1990, I opened my first shop, was called Passatempo in Milano. I had actually, to be honest with you, hundreds of customers, and the level of wealth, it was definitely very, very high. You have to also to consider that transactions were much easier at that time. Everything was easy. No problem about paying cash, no problem about paying wire, no problem about invoices. It was Italy was actually like a wild west of commerce. You could do any kind of things, and there were not so many controls, to be honest. So actually also entrepreneurs that were cashing a lot of money from their business, they were spending in cars, watches, arts like crazy. Still today, some of my friends that collect watches in Italy, they built incredible collections of art because it was possible to buy anything at that time. Prices of the merchandise was so different that to smart people a little bit ahead, a little bit international in their mind, for them it was easy to understand that the market would have grown because you could buy any kind of Italian artist. I have a friend who collects Fontana paintings from, like 30 years. He was buying those Fontana, the cuts, the Fontana with the cuts. He was buying for 20,000, 30,000. He was buying tons of them. He was buying like crazy. Today, those paintings, they're worth millions. It was like buying. Well, Massimo Baracca sold me a wartime 2-crown with the South American map for $180,000. This is what I paid, and I have to tell you, it was all the money in the world. And the other watch found in America, I found a watch with his partner at that time, Matt Bain. They found a watch in Palm Beach in a state of a guy, and actually, they sold the watch. I don't know, they tripled their money. They made a lot of money selling the watch at 180,000. I sold the watch to a friend of mine who still owns it, and it turned down 7.8 million a couple of years ago. This is the market. This is what the story was. You understand? You could find crazy watches. The bulletin in platinum is another watch that the father of Massimo Baracca, the JB champion, The
Yes.
father of Massimo, Giada Baracca, was one of my mentors, one of the nicest person I met in my life collecting watches. He was collecting watches in the early 80s when nobody was even thinking about, And when Massimo went to do the restaurants in Miami and gave me that big present to go over there and open Caffè Milano, and leave me the Milano instead Italian place free. And I met his father, and me and his father had a very good feeling. He was really an incredible good man. And I remember he had this watch in the collection. He bought it for $10,000 from Osvaldo Patrizzi that found the watch in 47th Street. You understand what we are talking about? It's a watch that was sold by Christie's. I think you sold that watch. I think you are the guilty
just when
guy.
I was arriving.
Yeah, so when you sold that watch in private equity for $4, $5 million. I don't know how much, but you understand today what is a watch maybe for $10 million, this kind of money. So the fact is, people has to understand that I'm nothing really special. I just had the passion of watches. Today, a young guy that is 20 years old, like I was, that grows with the passion of watches. Yes, okay, but he has to be son of a billionaire, because when he's 20, he cannot walk around and take a flight and go to America and think that he comes back with 20 watches, because it's impossible. Watches the worth of watches is million. So you have to understand that at that time, it was actually so easy that it was insane to think today to find those kind of watches in 47th Street at 8 o'clock in the morning. It was something unbelievable. Just to let you understand, when the first time I went in 47th Street in the late 80s, it was probably 1988, okay? First time I went at 8 o'clock in the morning. First of all, if you go today at 8 o'clock in the morning, not even the people that clean the streets are there. There's absolutely nobody working, okay? But at 8 o'clock in the morning, there were people opening rolls of watches on the cars, front. They were pulling on the cars and they were opening watches over there, and people was coming and look at the watches. Can you imagine to do something like that today?
On the streets.
On the street. I heard somebody once shot in Philip Chow restaurant 2 weeks ago at 1 o'clock to take his watch away, because the watch was a Nautilus and today is a $200,000 watch. So you have to understand today everything is more difficult. It's still very beautiful, but the market has to be handled very differently. We have to pay attention. You have to pay a lot of attention in everything, and you have to pay attention also with the money. And to make a transaction is 10 times more difficult. I don't have to talk with you that it comes from different auction houses, what the compliances are. When I hear this name, compliance, I want to go to sleep, because anything that regard compliance is difficult, you understand? But we have to live with that, because otherwise, if we don't follow the rules today, it's impossible to work. So if you think in the old days, there's really nothing that we can compare. We were lucky, the people that was there. It has been a different world. I'm very sorry for new guys. They have to respect new rules, and the still things that relate all these people anyway is because they like the watches, the vintage, the contemporary, the independent. To me, I like any watch. So I'm available, I look, and with attention, I get the help of my son, who is 22 years old, and I ask him many times his opinion, because helps me to understand why certain trend they go so strong. And so he tells me why a Richard Mille, that in my opinion, when I open a bag, I see those bags of Richard Mille in Instagram, and when I see the pictures of 20 Richard Mille in a bag, I actually say, wow, very cool colors, but they're all the same watch. It's all the same. For me, it's all the same watch. But then I understand that there's different materials, different complications, different colors, different things that attract the way of collecting watches of new people today. To me, still, of course, I see different level of quality of a 1518. I appreciate much more to see that and to be able to recognize the different level of quality of a yellow 1518, and to explain to people why one 1518 is worth to me 250,000, and because one is worth $1 million. Because this is the real thing that today divides the level of collectors. The quality, not only the rarity, but also the quality and the condition that the piece has been preserved. This is it.
And as an observer, I find it absolutely intriguing that you and your son are working together at Monaco Legend. He clearly looks at you as a mentor, and you're teaching him the secrets of the past. But in a way, you're learning from him too, as this new generation is rising up. What are you learning from your son about the watch market?
I'm learning a lot. I'm learning a lot because we have to follow the trends. Otherwise, we are too old to understand certain trends and why certain trends they change so quickly. You know, if you look at several auction catalog today, you see 90% watches independent and modern watches and contemporary. Because of course auction houses they also have to look at the numbers and they have to look at the budget and they have to make money. You know, it's not only passion, it's not only collection and staying together. It's about entrepreneur and about companies that have to make money at the end of the year. And big companies, the major like Christie's or Sotheby's, they cannot stay there and look how is trendy to sell a nice bubble back or to find the nice customer for the best of a Tony. Okay, it can be part of the deal, but of course, if people want to buy Francois Peugeot because today is one of the trendiest watchmaker in the world, you know, they have absolutely to buy Francois Peugeot. And you know, one of my most important regret of my life, you want to know what it is? I tell you, I'm not scared to tell it public. Claude Sfer, a very big friend of mine, one of the legend of this market, legend of collectors, and also somebody that I made several deals with in my life. He brought me to Francois Peugeot 15 years ago. 15 years ago, he brought me to the company in Geneva. He said, you have to come with me. We have to visit Francois. And we went to visit Francois Peugeot, who is one of the nicest guy, you know, a really very cool and nice guy to hang around. And he introduced me, and we visit all the company. And I see when Francois was making the watches, and he was trying to look for collectors like Claude and making watches personally for himself. And I was looking over there, and I was actually very skeptical about those watches, those resonance, two dials, different dials. For me, there was something very new. It was not part of my taste at that moment. And Claude was saying to me, you know, ask Francois to make a watch for yourself. He's going to make it, you know. He's going to be excited. He makes watches now. He wants to find good people, testimony that wears their watches. And so I talked to Claude. Claude ordered like, he had already Francois Peugeot, but he ordered another 3-4 incredible watches that today for sure he has in his collection. And you know what I said? He said, Claude, really, I don't understand. It's really not my taste. I don't want to buy something that after I don't wear. Now you understand why I asked my son? Because maybe if my son was already 20, he would have said, Dad, you are just old. You should buy one of these watches. The watch is super cool. Today I look at Francois Peugeot watches and I regret I don't own any of the first he made. They are incredible watches, super cool. And today I understand, and you know, I regret I don't have any, and still I didn't have any in my sale to promote to my friend because they're now incredible big prices, you know? So absolutely, you have to learn from your kids, and you have to look what they look when they go on Instagram, or what they order when they go to a restaurant. You know, I learned also a lot of things about this from my son also to get a little bit more healthy, you know. And I have to tell you, definitely, if we don't look to the next generation, we are already passed away.
So well said, and I couldn't agree more. And I look forward to my son being a little older, and hopefully my son or daughters will join me someday.
But you're lucky because you're very young still, so you have all the time.
All the time in the world. We can only hope. Davide, you are a collector first and foremost, and you very publicly have shared your passion with watches, but also cars. Do you wear your vintage watches and do you drive your vintage cars?
Every day.
Every day.
Absolutely every day. I change watch almost every 2-3 days, and I wear all my watches, even those that are for sale, even those that are not. And I drive my cars as soon as I can, but I will tell you, like 3-4 times a different car every week. 3 cars a week at least. I can't do. I can't avoid that. I like it too much. The moment we are talking, I don't want to make you jealous, because I see you, you are in your nice New York and everything. I'm in Monaco. Outside, there's incredible weather. I took a convertible Bentley from 1991 that I have in turquoise color, and I went to Beaulieu with my friend Adam Victor that joined me for the auction here in Monaco, and I brought him to have lunch in front of the sea. With this car, it was incredible, emotional. It was fantastic. It was in heaven. And I have to tell you, every day that I drive a vintage car, every day that I see vintage cars, even on the internet, or cars that are racing Mille Miglia or Goodwood Revival, I like vintage cars at the same level that I like vintage watches. To be honest, is one of my biggest passion. Because my really sickness is the design of the 20th century and the history of the 20th century. If I was a good student, I would have been an historian. I wasn't a good student. I couldn't teach anybody about anything. But the history of the 20th century is the history that passionated me the most. Because of course the incredible evolution of everything in the 20th century, in the watch industry, in the car industry, in the art industry, is what if you have feelings for the vintage and for the history, is what that passionate you the most. So the cars, it's something incredible. When you see when I go to Pebble Beach in the summer, or I go to race the Mille Miglia in May, and you see those cars that have an incredible history, all been for 50, 70, 80 years on the floor and still racing and going around and giving fun and emotion to people and to new car takers. This is something that for me has no price.
Are there cars and watches that you'll never sell?
Never sell for a dealer. I have a DNA of a dealer. Never sell is a big word. All the things that I promised to myself that I would have never sold, sooner or later I found somebody that gave me the right price. So for me, actually, I promised myself that to continue the lifestyle that I started 30 years ago when I began, something has for me always to have a price. I have not the possibility to say that everything is never for sale. Always, it has to be the right guy. It has to be the right new caretaker for anything, either for a watch or either for a car, but everything has a price. Otherwise, you cannot be a dealer. Otherwise, you only have to be a collector. You have to be born already collector, and this is something that unfortunately I couldn't afford, but has been part of the game because it always stimulated me to have something new that was nicer than the thing I sold. So when I sold the Paul Newman that I wanted never to sell, then I was looking for the best one to have the next time.
As a new dealer starting out, I have to say I've learned that the hard way too. I have a tray of watches, a tray of Patek Philippe watches that I say I'll never sell. They're always the first to sell.
When you think something is never for sale, it means you bought it because you think it's one of the best, and that's your friend and your customer will want from you immediately. This happens to me every second, and it was happening all the life. When I bought the Baudai the first time, or I'll auction it, I said, this is the watch. If I have to keep one watch, I will keep this one. 3 times I sold it. 3. Before it ended again at auction.
And you might get it again someday. You never know.
You never know. You never know.
Let's talk about some of your biggest clients, at least the ones you could share their names openly. And you mentioned earlier Sandro Frattini, a name that just evokes the passionate, knowledgeable collector of the highest order. And you and I had the pleasure of working together on the My Time book that was published by Christie's, which is a massive tome of Sandro's collection that shows some of those beautiful imagery shot on denim, of course. And can you share any stories about Sandro's collection and some of the adventures of putting this collection together?
Of course. Well, it comes exactly at the right moment with the question you asked before. The difference between a dealer and a true collector. Sandro has not the DNA of a dealer. He's not able to sell. Watches are still the biggest part of his life, and he cannot sell one watch without having an incredible pain. So the big part of his collection will never be for sale. It would be just recommended to his new generation, to his son. And the fact is that I had the incredible luck to meet Sandro in 1990. I was working really since 2-3 years, and Sandro was completely crazy about watches. He was completely mad about buying everything. He wanted to own all the best Rolexes, Patek, Audemars Piguet, Cartier, Rolexes, everything, He's either Longines he liked at the beginning, he really was buying everything. He liked the vintage more than ever. His profession, he born in a very rich family. He was very lucky at the beginning from his side. But after he developed a very important skill for everything that was vintage, also the profession to work with the denim had something to do, because the denim is related to vintage clothing, is related to vintage atmosphere and everything. So, and he went to America very young also himself. I have to tell you that Sandro is a collector that did all his collection by himself. I was just an help. I wasn't, I cannot talk about myself like he's curator or whatever. I was possibly one of his best friends in his, collecting watches adventure. This is for sure. And maybe one of the guys that was able to find for him most of the watches that he bought. But he bought all over. He bought in auction houses also by himself, other dealers he knew. He's known by all the most important dealers in the world. He was traveling and he had the luck and the taste and the sensibility to buy watches with a different eye, when also the style of buying was very different. Because, of course, today, the condition report of a watch is the most important thing that is related to the sale of the same. Actually, at the end of the 80s, condition report didn't even exist. You had to have the feeling to value the watch itself. And Sandro always liked the watches with the original patina, with the watches that showed all their history when you looked at them, And so he made this incredible collection that if you go through the book, which of course I don't have to remind you, you know much better than me, because you contributed absolutely much more than me also to finish. We did some work together, very nice. And if you remember, some of the work we did, it was also to cut some watches from the book, because in his madness, he wanted to buy even watches. If you remember, we had a discussion. He had a steel moon face 6062 in steel with a black dial and blue date on the outside. And he bought that watch completely aware that the watch had been refinished, absolutely aware. He bought it as a refinished dial, and he wanted to put it in the book because he liked a lot the way that the dial was refinished. And I said, Sandro, we cannot put the watch in the book. It's a reprinted dial. People is going to laugh after you. And he said, I don't care. This dial is fantastic. The guy who refinished, he made it even better than if Rolex made it in black originally. So he absolutely never follows the rules. He's not a guy that follows any kind of rules in his life, and I can tell you for a lot of things that are related to his lifestyle. But, this makes him a genius of the collecting, and this makes him somebody that has put together the most incredible amount of nice things that ever appeared in the vintage market. I was lucky to be part of the game. And I'm actually still very lucky to be one of his best friends. Yesterday he was in my room, in my auction room. And I have to tell you, we had a lot of his cousin consigned the Cartier collection, and me, him, and his cousin, and we actually shared a lot of nice emotion after my success at the auction yesterday.
And I could just imagine it's just the memories you have with those two collectors in particular in your treasure hunting. Does
Absolutely.
Any particular stories come to mind? Like, what's the most exotic place you've ever gone to find a watch?
I have to tell you, I was lucky to make an important connection enough that I had never to travel to Uganda or Pakistan or Korea, South Korea to find a watch. Watches in the beginning of at the late 80s, beginning of the 90s, really watches began to come to myself. I had so many big collectors. I have people in Milano, one of my biggest collector everybody knows, and one of the people that I respect the most in this business is Enrico De Marco. He's another monster of collecting. Everybody knows him. There's no secret, and everybody knows he's one of my best friends. Everybody knows I'm one of the best friends of his son that today works at Philips, Marcello.
Who's doing a great job as an auctioneer,
too. Doing a great job, and he's going to be a great guy in the auction business and in collecting business because he has a great passion for watches. And I've seen him when he was, 2 years old. So actually, I can tell enough about that family. Enrico is another guy that helped me a lot. He wanted to buy all the best Patek Philippe, at the beginning of the 90s. So I traveled the whole world to find them. But to be honest, the whole world at that time was to go to America, sometime to Hong Kong, London, Paris. You didn't have to make a crazy adventure or safari in Africa to find nice watches. When some incredible watch appeared in other parts of the world, usually after 2-3 passages, a good dealer, they called me and said, there's this watch available, you want to buy it. Or auctions also, they used to find incredible watches. So I don't have a particular souvenir of an incredible trip that I made. I have to tell you that one of the most incredible trips I made to buy a watch was in the mid-80s. A guy from Turin called my shop. I had a shop in Milano, end of the 80s actually. And the guy from Turin called, he had a split second steel, a 1436, retailed by Astra Turin. So that's the most incredible trip I made. Milano Turin in the highway. The guy said, I found this watch in the safe box of my father, and I want to sell it because I want to buy a horse. And I said, wow. But, again, no internet, no cell phones, no pictures. And I said, are you sure the watch is a split second? He said, okay. I went to a jeweler here. I went to Astra, which is still open, and they told me the watch is a split second chronograph. The reference is 1436. But I have to tell you, the watch is not in gold. It's no precious at all. It's in steel. Okay. I said, okay, I want to come to Turin and I come to see it. And he said, yeah, I'll be available. Call me, give me a call next week, and I'll be available to meet you and show you the watch. And I said, no, sir, you don't understand. I have to come to Turin tonight because a friend of mine gives a birthday dinner in Turin, and I'm leaving now Milano to come to the dinner. Absolutely, completely invented, no birthday, nothing. I was in my store. I told my guy to close the store immediately. This guy said, well, okay, it's already 6 o'clock. It's going to take you a while to be here. And I said, no, it's going to take me very short because I'm already in the highway. I was in the center of Milan. So I took my guy, we closed the store, we went in the highway. I took probably, all the tickets and fines I could have taken because I don't know how many cameras they shot us with the speed, but we were in Turin in 1 hour from Milano. Today with the traffic, it's actually 1 hour, 40 minutes, 2 hour minimum. We were over there and I went to see the watch, and the guy was a very nice guy. And I told him, it's a watch that I can take care for you of the sale. We can put it in auction. There are Swiss auction house and I made everything very difficult, to be honest with you. It was part of the game. I said, we have to go through the custom, put the watch in auction, the custom is going to approve it, the watch is going to be exported. At the end of the day, the guy said, okay, but are you interested to buy it? I want to sell it. And I said, well, of course, if you want to sell it, I can buy it. Actually, by chance, still because I was going to a birthday party, I have some cash with me, and I threw a package of cash on the table. And I said, if you want, I can buy the watch and you go buy your horse. And both of us were very happy. The watch was an incredible watch, in incredible condition. To be honest, at that time, after maybe I kept the watch 1.5 years because I loved it too much, and really I was sleeping with the watch. Still today, one of the rarest watches ever appeared. Still 1463. This one never appeared back on the market. I gave it to Osvaldo, who put it in one of the first auctions in 1991 or two. Mm-hmm. I don't remember. We sold the watch with a very good profit, but still at that time, if I say the price today, it would look ridiculous. I think we got like probably 400,000 Swiss, which was an incredible world record, but compared to the value of today, was absolutely nothing, a fraction of ridiculous of the price. We put the watch in auction, and the watch sold and never surfaced again the auction market or the private market. I never saw the watch again. This was one of the most incredible adventures, because it was very lucky that I reached Turin alive with my guy driving the car, and all the things that were involved in that trip. But other than that, if you know me enough and you know the watches that passed through my hands, it would be a long book that I can write with the history of every watch.
I think it's a book we'd like to read. Speaking of steel, my understanding is all 4 steel 1518s known went through your hands at one point. Is that true?
Another story and another big truth. Yes. Fortunately, again, not because of any particular, because if there was any particular genius thing in that, I would own one. And I don't own any, 4 friends of mine own. No, actually, one is not even a friend, because Aurel then took care of selling it again to some China or whatever guy. I owned the watches in the 90s. Well, everything was possible. And the biggest price I got for the last one I sold was $1.6 or $1.7 million. Then the watches changed hand again. Only 2 of the watches that I originally sold are still in the hands of the collectors that they bought originally from me. One is Sandro Frattini, one is Enrico De Marco. Then Enrico De Marco was so wise to buy the second one, but himself also, after some years, he thought that having 2 watches of the same kind was unuseful for his collection. He accepted an offer to sell it, and now this watch again is owned by another friend, Italian. And the last watch that went in Australia several years ago, then it was sold again by Aurel. But originally, all of them, the one that Aurel sold for $11 million, I bought it from Jeff Harris, one of another dinosaurs, but the big mountain of this world, and I bought it for $700,000 in 1995, I would say. And at that time, I have to tell you, we had to negotiate terms, because I wasn't able to buy the watch and pay immediate cash. I paid the watch in 2-3 installments already, because the watch was owned by a German collector, and Jeff traveling all over the world, like he's exactly doing today.
Like he does now.
Does now. Yes, he was in Monaco in my auction room. He bought watches. Today, I don't know if he's already in Japan or in Los Angeles or wherever, And Jeff negotiated the price with me. I paid that watch $700,000. I sold it, and that watch stayed in an Italian collection for 15 years at least before being sold, or 10, 12 years for sure. It was another great adventure. Also, the 1518 is still a part of my career, a part of my memories, and of course, I regret I didn't keep one. But believe me, John, I regret I didn't keep so many things that I couldn't live if I have to live under regret. I live on the energy to see what's happening tomorrow.
One thing that really strikes me is when you talk about your top clients is the word friendship. It sounds like these aren't clients. These are friends. These are people you dine with, you vacation with, and they're part of your life.
It's my big problem. My
Mhm.
big problem. To install a nice relationship with the customer, actually, I need to be his friend, because for me, buying watches is spending emotions of life together, is also earning emotions of life together. And it's something that it's difficult for me to share with people that I don't have any kind of relationship. I am very good in the one-to-one. I'm very good at that. I did that for 35 years. And so I know, as a matter of fact, is the best thing I can do. So I'm trying, and I like this business, but I like it mostly because it's a very international business, and it's a business that I can transmit to my kids, because, for them is much more appropriate. For my school and my old school, to sit down, have a drink, and especially a glass of wine and a slice of good prosciutto, and make a deal about a nice watch is the most beautiful thing I can do. I'm really good at that, especially in choosing the prosciutto more than the watch. And, absolutely, I lived all life with that, and I will continue also life with that. I do it also today, and believe me, still it is big part of my feeling and of my way of conducting the business. I like that my customers, the people that I advise for their investments, they are all my good friends. Actually, they cannot be either than my good friends, because people that is with me with 30 years, they made, from their words, not my words, most of them made much more money with their investments in watches than in their business that they did for their life. You understand? This is a matter of fact. And so if you think about that, you have to understand that, of course, they are my friend. They are my friend because they thank me for what we did together. And, and you know what? I did it, and I made a lot of profit on that. I can tell clearly, everybody knows I'm not the guy that sells and gives you the watch for free. I make profit. I make it a good profit, because I know that when I find something very rare, even if I make a profit, the real profit is made by the guy who buys the watch. In the time, it always pay back. And everybody of my friends, they know already. Absolutely.
Well, that is very well said. And I have a favor to ask of you, Davide.
Anything.
Next time we're in Geneva, it would be a pleasure and honor to go to the Patek Philippe Museum with you. Walking those the floors would bring back a lot of memories, and a good portion of those watches went through your hands. So first, what will you do that? And second, what kind of stories do you have of the Patek Philippe Museum that you could share publicly, and you could save the other ones for privately?
First of all, I would do it with pleasure. Absolutely. I'm very proud and thankful that you asked me something like that. I love that place, of course, like everybody involved in our passion. And yes, I have a lot of memories, because many of the complicated and of the nice things that are over there, I had the luck, together with a lot of friends, maybe handled by Osvaldo, by Aurel, by Darren, by you. I had the luck to collocate several of those watches inside those windows, and to find them earlier and to see them over there gives me a lot of energy and a lot of satisfaction. I'm happy to go there with you, share those memories with you, and come with my son together. He will be happy to hear those memories also. I already did, but I will do it again with pleasure. I have a lot of respect for that place. It's incredible. I had a lot of respect. I have a lot of respect for Patek Philippe, of course, as a brand. For me, is for sure the most important, and actually the most important of my life. The brand that gave me the most incredible satisfaction and emotions that I shared with my friends and customers. And I had a lot of respect for Philip Stern, everything that he did when he made the museum. Also, the curator that went over there, you first involved, and also Arnaud Tellier was my very good friend. when he was over there. I was not so in confidence with Alan Bunbury because I was too young when he was there already, but I had the luck to meet him, and I had the luck to meet Philip Stern many times when he was bidding at the auction, and sometimes I was underbidder for my private collector. So I know I had a certain esteem from him of what I was doing, and I was lucky to meet Thierry Stern, even if, of course, being a dealer, Thierry has his concept and his really good tradition to keep his company, private with his family. But for sure, to walk inside those rooms with you is going to be a pleasure, and any kind of history on the few watches, but some that I know there that are related also to my history, I will be happy to share with you anytime.
I greatly look forward to that, and thank you, because
My
not
pleasure.
only does each watch have its aesthetic, its technical and horological history, there's also the market history of each of those timepieces, and thanks to you, a lot of those watches have been rediscovered, and I think those stories need to be told just as much. And I understand the Patek Philippe Museum doesn't want to tell what amount each watch cost, but that's sometimes interesting to know when tying it together with all the other aspects of a timepiece.
Oh, well, absolutely. That's sure. For sure, for them, it's not a matter of cost. It was never a matter of cost, especially for Philip Stern. He was never looking about the price that he was paying. He was really looking to fill those windows with the right items and the right rarities that he was missing. So, I'm very happy to go there and talk about all the watches I know, and also about the watches that I don't know, that have not been mine, but maybe that I know the history and I can share it with you.
Thank you, Davide. Hopefully I can get to Geneva soon, because it's been a few years. So hopefully soon. Yeah, I hope. I have a tough question for you. Well, maybe it's not tough. You tell me. You are one of the few dealers, sellers, auctioneers that uses the word investment in occasionally presenting timepieces or talking about timepieces. What's your opinion on investing in Patek Philippe?
Actually, it couldn't be any better than that, Of course, I have to talk about investment because spending money in watches in the last 35 years, as far as I'm concerned, has been one of the best ways to spend the money and to invest their money for collectors, even those that started only with the passion, but actually they've seen their money and their investment growing so much that the value of the watches in their collection has become a real asset. And of course, today, the more and more people that approach the market not only for the passion and not only because they like the watches, but even, of course, because they want to diversify their asset and their investment, because today, in a good portfolio, the watch portfolio of investment, the watches, the cars, the hearts are incredible, valuable assets that everybody wants to have, because they give also different kind of revaluation that, as I told you, and which is really the big part of my life, is a revaluation also in emotions. The fact that you buy, you can buy Amazon and make money. You can buy Facebook. You can buy any kind of Coca-Cola and make money. But the fact is that to own that portfolio in your bank doesn't give you actually the big feeling of like wearing a Patek Philippe 1518 and wearing and possessing the watch for 2, 3, 5 years, and then in 5 years is that you can see that you made maybe 25-30% on the value. And when you buy something really rare and nice, maybe you see that also the revaluation is much higher than any kind of portfolio of investment you can keep with your bank. So I think that in today's world, with all the level of wealth that is developing around the world, new generation and also new people that is making money now is discovering more and more that actually to diversify and have also a nice collection of watches, it's something that is absolutely very wise and very smart for your investment, because you still can enjoy and have a lot of emotions back, of nice emotions to wear a nice watch. And you see what happens today with the modern watches. People is absolutely not collecting. They want to buy Nautilus, but they want them double sealed and not even taken out of from the safe. You don't have to tell me that this is collecting, because collecting is another thing. As I tell you, I drive all my cars and I wear all my watches, and this for me is actually collecting, giving an eye to the investment and not losing the money, and not trying to do the best business, but just buying something that you like very much. But if you buy a double seal watch and you keep it in the safe, you are investing your money. I respect that. I can advise you also on that for what I concerned, and as far as I can. But of course, this is a different thing. So investing has been more and more, and absolutely never as today, a word that involves the watch market all over the world. I have customers that calls me, and they say, where do you think I should invest? In which brand I should invest my money? And I'm very clear. I don't have any future crystal ball to tell. So I always suggest that if you buy something nice, you buy it with your taste, and it's rare and it's good quality, but it's very good and it's under every aspect, it will always pay you back better than than any other investment you can make. So this is my idea. I've been living on that. It paid me back. I hope to be able to do it also for the next generations.
And that reminds me something that I've learned and watched over the years. Wow, almost 25 years I've watched how you inspect the vintage watch, how you hold the watch in your hands, and how decisions are made when you look at that timepiece. It's almost as if the watch speaks to you. How do you decide when you want to buy a watch? What is your process?
Yeah, it's really like exactly what you told. The watch speak to me. Many people laugh a little bit about it and thinks that I emphasize this kind of concept, but really I decide in a minute if I want to buy a watch or not, because after so many years, the watch is. Me and other friends, we really say there are watches that speaks and the watches that doesn't speak. And if a watch doesn't speak, I decide not to buy it, whatever. But if a watch has the right level of originality and the right level of quality, and that what I like, I see that is in the real good shape that I want, I buy. I try to buy it. Then most of the time, recently, it has become always very difficult to buy things I like, because the price sometimes is a problem. A long time ago, the price was not so much a problem, because watches, they were very, very low priced. But today, even if sometimes I see things that I like, and after I decide I want to buy it, then I go back home without the watch, because actually somebody with much more money opportunities than I have, he goes and he buys itself. But if I decide that I want it, I try it, And this is all done today really by the quality and the reality. To be honest with you, with all the quantity of watches that you can imagine that pass through my hands, now is more and more difficult that I see things that I really want to own. It happens when I see something that I never owned in my life. So when I see something like that, I really feel like, wow, I really would like to have that one, because in all those years, I could never own it once, and, it would be one of my dreams to pass it through my hands, and like Carlos says, to polish a little bit, because when I have watches in my hands, I like to touch them and maybe I polish with a little tissue, just to see how they look, and then to find a new caretaker. This is what gives me still a lot of emotion.
So ultimately, it's about knowledge, taste, and passion. But have you ever lost on a watch that you bought?
tons of times. I mean, if you don't lose, if you don't make mistakes, there's something wrong in what you do. Of course, I'm losing the moment we are talking. I'm losing on maybe, I don't know, 15 top hats that I have in my safe and my collections. I have top hats Patek Philippe in pink gold, platinum, yellow gold. Every time that I find one nice, with a nice case, with a nice dial, in very good condition, that I see it's all natural, I still want to buy it. But this is losing money because trends are not in that direction. And so, I know that the price I paid is not possible to get. If I want to sell it, I lose. You make a loss. But you know what? I have to tell you something. A few days ago, I read a very interesting article on Bloomberg, I think, and it was about the shortage of modern watches, the fact that they don't produce, they emphasize the exclusivity, the brand of their watches. They're all playing the Hermes politics. And now Rolex, you go into the retailer, you ask for a Datejust, and they look at you and they say, you have to wait 6 months for a Datejust, And those watches, everybody knows that a company like Rolex could produce tons of Datejust and just put them in the window, no problem. But I understand it's, of course, a very good politics of the brands to raise the exclusivity of the watches. And this raises also the prices. All those watches, they go in the gray market and they sell for more money, which is not a business that I do because I don't do more than you, and I never did. I don't want to compete with brands, and I don't want to compete with the retailers that are some of them are my big friend. But I really also think about another matter. In the moment of investing, and when you want to make a good investment, you don't have to buy what everybody wants. You have to buy in the other way. You have to buy what people don't want. So still, in my looking, in my search of watches, and when I go to other auctions, I don't try to buy what everybody is looking for, because of course it's going to bring a lacquer. I try to buy maybe watches that are not under the big eye of collectors, investors, speculators, and whatever is involved in the market, but still that are watches that deserve an eye because they are good quality, good makers, and very good movement. So this is what I do, and this way I still like to do that, and I don't care. Maybe even if I have I don't know many 10 top hats in the safe Patek Philippe, I'm gonna have 12 in the next 2 months, because if I find two nice that I don't have, I'm gonna buy them also.
Beautifully said, and I happen to love the 1450, so maybe we should talk. I think there's a market there. So.
I know that you like them. I've been selling you maybe a couple in the last 2-3 years. Yeah. When I put some for sale, you're always at that. You're a very smart buyer, and when you buy something, we definitely have the same taste, because I know already when you like something or not.
It's true. It's when you contact me and say it's something you might like, it's my taste purely. It's
absolutely. The problem is that you are so cheap. You want to pay too cheap.
What can I say? The dollar is not as strong as it used to be.
I'm joking. I have the maximum respect for what you're doing and the way you do it, always.
Oh, thank you, Davide. And it goes both ways. And now we need your sage advice for 3 categories of people. What would you advise today to, number one, to new collectors that are buying their first vintage Patek Philippe? How would you advise them?
I hate to repeat myself, but at the end of the day, I always say the same things. Follow your taste, look and have a good advisor. Don't buy vintage watches that you don't know if you're not advised. The market is tricky at this moment. Many people think you can make easy money, and they have not yet knowledge enough to sell the vintage watches. You can buy a modern watch, box and paper, even used, and you can accept to buy it even if from young dealers that they just make it for making their own money for the day. But if you want to buy vintage watches, you have to advise by somebody that is well known in the market for vintage watches, because otherwise it's quite tricky, and it's quite today, unfortunately, it's quite often that you find watches not of the right quality level, and then you regret what you bought. And this gets you away from that market, because if you buy something that you discover it's not what you thought, then you regret to do it, and then you go and buy only contemporary and modern watches. So the vintage field is something that you have to approach, but you have to approach advised from important, correct, and well-known dealers. This is my first advice. You have to have somebody that follows, that is your friend, that suggests you, even if it's not his watch. I have friends that calls me. This morning, a friend called me and said, have you seen how many nice watches Antiquarum has in the next catalog, Philips has in the next catalog? And I said, it's insane. I've seen the catalogs this morning of Geneva, and I have to tell you, Antiquarum has one of the best sales of the last 20 years. I actually was quite astonished, because they made a great job. They have, did you see the catalog? They have incredible watches. I mean, when you do it, you will remain astonished. They have a great catalog, and they have great watches. So, I said to my friend, tell me what you like. I'm going to go to Geneva. For sure, maybe we can try to buy something. There's so many good watches that we can try to get some for a very good price, or anyway for a fair price. And this is my style with everybody. Even if I have an auction house, I have a private business, I sell watches in privately. But for me, I always say the same stupid thing. I don't play for the team, I play for the game. Because if you play for the game, at the end is the team that gains. But if you play for yourself only, it's too complicated. There's too much competition, too many conflicts. You have to play for the game. When you see something nice from other players, it's nice. That's it. You don't have. There's too much jealousy in this business. Everybody does only for his own interest. I was never like that. I never discriminate watches from other dealers, from colleagues. For me, the watches that are nice are nice. The watches that are not nice, they're not nice. That's finished. Then you have to make your own choice what you want to sell or what you want to handle. This is the thing. I try to sell good watches. I hope I'm good at what I do, and I do it in the best way that I can do. But maybe there are people that have better possibilities. This I absolutely allow, and I don't care. But when you see watches that are good, you have to make advertisement to everybody. So I was talking with friends, and Aulo yesterday called me and said, wow, look at that catalog. We have to buy some of those pocket watches. They have a collection of pocket watches that, as far as I know you, John, you're going to go sick. They have incredible watches. I hope you will not have any money to spend, because I want to steal them from you.
We may be bidding against each other.
And this happened already many times. I will not be surprised.
This is a great segue to the second category I have. What advice do you have for new dealers, new watch dealers in our industry? There's a lot of new ones surfacing every day. What would you like to tell them?
Study in the watches, but not on the internet, not on the picture. Take the watches in your hands, go to all exhibition, go inside every shop and ask to look every single watch. You want to start this business, don't think you learn looking at internet pictures, because internet pictures are not the reality. They teach you, and you make yourself a culture, which is a culture about details, about numbers of production, about different references. And this you can do it. On the books, you can do it. But if you want to really be an expert and you want to advise somebody else about what you have to buy, you have to have the watch in your hands. The watch has to talk to you. You have to see and you have to look at all the principles. The principles are the hallmarks, the condition of the dial, the homogeneity of the watch, the restoration level. These things on the internet, you don't get it enough. The pictures can be not of the good quality. The pictures can be, Photoshop, alterated, change colors, ameliorated, there's so many different things you can do with the pictures. You have to put the watches in your hands, and the more watches you see, the more you will get an experience that you can advise other friends to buy and to recognize you as an expert. This is only my advice. All the rest, the market is open absolutely for everybody.
In the third category, I'd like to hear your words and advice for is for the auction houses. What can they do better for our common love in the industry today, in your opinion? And any specific advice for any of the rising stars in the vintage watch world?
I'm really a dwarf of the auction houses. I cannot really advise anybody because I am the guy who has to learn from them. So the only thing I can say, I see all auction houses are going great. It's a big moment for auction houses. People like to buy at auction. Auction houses are in the middle of the fire because they battle against each other to have stuff. And actually, I see them, all the auction houses of watches are growing exponentially. But still, we are a very, very small market. There was an auction of contemporary art Saturday night in London. I've looked at the results, and probably the results are for maybe the whole auction in Geneva together, Philips, Antiquorum, Christie's, and Sotheby's in November. They will not make the amount of money that this sale of I don't know if it was Christie's or something contemporary evening. Sorry to forget about that. But I've seen Boetti for 2.8 million pounds. It was in London. I've seen Basquiat, 8 million pounds, 10 million pounds. Auction houses in the watches, they have an incredible career still to develop. We are not even at the half of the market opportunities because the market is very small. There's a lot. The shortage of contemporary watches is going to increase the auction market and is going to give the auction market the opportunity to get watches and sell watches for any kind of money to collectors because they are not able to get them in the shop. And this is something the manufacturer, they should consider a little bit because at a certain level, the shortage is going to be too short. They will have to release some more watches. Otherwise, auction houses are going to be retailers like they are now. I'm really a very small reality in the auction business. And so we had 280 watches. But if you see the quantity of online that Christie's and Sotheby's, they do with the online auctions, the online private sale availability, and the auction houses and the auction lives that they make, how many watches now they offer per month? If you see all the locations, they offer 700 watches, 800 watches, 1,000 watches. Everybody can absolutely buy whatever they want. And every auctions, they do 10% more than the other. Royal Oaks, Nautilus, Rolex Daytonas, this kind of watches, they raise 10% now. Once, when I was in a real logical, market, they were raising 10% per year. Now we have a raise of 10% every 60 days of certain level of watches. You have to understand, it's not matter of a bubble. There's no merchandise, and there's more and more people coming. There's more rich people coming into the world. There's more amount of money on the table. People want the watches, and the watches are going to be available, but the price is going to raise always. I actually don't see a way going back to that. So for me, actually, the business that auction houses are doing is among the best. What can I say? Aurel is doing an incredible job. He has the best team, the best location, the best offices, the best catalogs, best customers. What's best else you want me to find? Of course, you look at his auctions, you are in heaven. If you own watches, you are in heaven for what you have in the safe. If you want to buy, there's any kind of maker, any kind of brand, any kind of model available, or in Hong Kong, or in Geneva, or in New York. I cannot be so arrogant to give a suggestion to auction houses. I think the only thing is always good quality, rarity, and more young expert, but real expert. There are some auction houses that actually are assisted by people that they are not so great connoisseur of the vintage market. This maybe is a little bit, fail, a little bit hole that they have to fill. I understand it's difficult because today to get young dealers that they want to go and work for an auction house is difficult because they get enough money making private sales themselves. you are the living proof of that. It's not worth for you to be even one of the most recognized experts of the field. It's difficult for an auction house to find the right salary to keep somebody like you inside the auction. You understand? You have your lifestyle, you can enjoy your time more, and you get for sure, I'm sure, much more kind of money with your nice watches that you sell. It's very normal. And this is possibly something that is going to be a problem in the future. And that's also why most of the major, they go more on the modern and contemporary watches than on the vintage, because they know that over there, if they don't have the real right people, they could make some kind of mistake. This is maybe a screen a bit bigger, but it's sort of what is happening at the moment.
Davide, it's been an absolute pleasure. We've covered so many topics, but before we wrap up, would you like to offer some final words to our listeners?
Oh, it was a pleasure. It was just a pleasure to talk with you. It was very easy. You're always very kind. You're one of the nicest guy. I thank you very much, because this is something a lot of fun for me also. And when there is to talk about watches, and when there is to talk about the market, and when there is to talk also about the cars, call me anytime. I'm always available. I want to share this with you. I wait in Geneva for a nice glass of wine and a visit to the Patek Philippe Museum. Now I look forward to go. We have to go together.
Thank you, Davide. Hope to see you very soon.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Let's see you soon. And thank you very much again.
This was the 8th episode in our Collectability podcast series. Thank you all for listening. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please like and subscribe, and remember to follow us on any podcast player you enjoy using in order not to miss any of our future recordings. Thank you very much for listening. This is John Reardon for Collectability.